The crowd outside Docking Bay 17 continued to grow. Yuna watched through her ship's cameras as beings from dozens of species gathered in peaceful protest. Some held signs they had quickly made. Some recorded videos on their personal devices. Some simply stood with their arms crossed and their eyes fixed on the Syndicate soldiers. Commander Threx's voice came through the communication system again. He sounded less calm than before. "This gathering is unauthorized," he announced. "All civilians must disperse immediately." Nobody moved. A human woman at the front of the crowd called out in a clear voice, "We are not breaking any laws. We are simply standing in a public corridor." "That is all right," the Syndicate soldiers looked uncertain. They had been trained to deal with criminals and smugglers. They had not been trained to deal with families and shopkeepers who refused to move. "Commander," one of the soldiers said quietly, "there are children in the crowd. If we use force, it will look very bad." Threx knew this. The Syndicate operated by fear, but also by reputation. They presented themselves as providers of order in contested space. If images of their soldiers attacking peaceful civilians spread across the galaxy, it would damage their business relationships. But he could not simply let this human escape with stolen property, either. Then something else happened, something that changed everything. A new signal appeared on the station's sensors. A ship was approaching. It was large and well-armed, and it carried the markings of the Galactic Accords Patrol Nexus Station. A formal voice announced, "This is Patrol Vessel Righteous Dawn. We have received reports of illegal trafficking in protected species. We are requesting permission to dock and conduct an inspection." Threx cursed in his native language. The broadcast that Yuna had made had reached beyond the station. Someone had forwarded it to the authorities. The Galactic Accords Patrol rarely ventured into contested space, but when they did, they had the legal authority to investigate crimes that violated interstellar treaties, and the trafficking of Marathi was exactly such a crime. Threx faced an impossible choice. If he allowed the patrol to dock, they would find evidence of illegal activity throughout the station. The Syndicate would face sanctions and seizures and potentially criminal charges. But if he refused to let them dock, it would be seen as an act of defiance against the Accords. Other systems would use it as justification to crack down on Syndicate operations everywhere. All of this trouble over 6 small creatures. "Commander," Selig said to Yuna, "the patrol vessel is demanding a response." Yuna smiled. "Let the Syndicate figure out how to respond," she said. "I think they have bigger problems than us now." She was right after several tense minutes. Commander Thrax made his decision. "Attention cargo vessel Steadfast Wind," he said. "After reviewing the circumstances, we have determined that this matter was a simple commercial dispute. The merchant Vrek has withdrawn his complaint. You are free to depart at your convenience. We encourage you to leave quickly." Yuna did not need to be told twice. She fired up the engines and guided her ship toward the station's exit. The crowd outside the docking bay cheered as she flew past. She could see them waving through the viewport. She waved back even though they probably could not see her. The patrol vessel was still waiting outside. They scanned her ship as she passed but did not stop her. Perhaps they were more interested in what they would find on the station. Perhaps they simply decided she had been through enough. Either way, Yuna did not question her good fortune. She pointed her ship toward open space and engaged the faster-than-light drive. The stars stretched into lines of light. Then everything went quiet. They were safe. Selig emerged from the engine room and sat down in the co-pilot's seat. His skin had returned to its normal gray color. "That was the most terrifying experience of my life," he said. "Mine too," Yuna admitted. "Do you regret it?" Yuna thought about the question. She had lost all her savings. Her ship's engine still needed repairs. They would have to take the long route to the nearest human station because they could not afford the fuel for a direct journey. It would add weeks to their travel time. But then she heard a sound from the cargo hold. It was a soft, happy yipping. She walked back and opened the cage doors. The 6 Mirithi pups tumbled out and immediately began exploring the ship. One of them climbed into her lap and licked her face. Its tail wagged so fast it was almost a blur. "No," Una said. "I do not regret it." 3 weeks later, the steadfast wind finally docked at Port Harmony, a human station on the edge of settled space. Una had used the travel time to bond with the Mirithi she had named each one. She had taught them simple commands. She had fallen completely in love with all 6 of them. A representative from an animal welfare organization was waiting at the dock. They had heard about her story through the news feeds. They offered to take the Mirithi and find them permanent homes. Una agreed even though it broke her heart. She knew she could not care for 6 growing creatures on a cargo ship. They deserved better than that. As the pups were being loaded onto the transport, one of them broke away and ran back to Una. It was the same one who had licked her fingers through the cage bars on that first day. It pressed against her legs and whimpered, "This one does not want to leave you." The representative observed, "Would you consider keeping her?" Una looked down at the small creature. Those big eyes looked up at her with absolute trust and love. "Yes," she said. "I think I would." She named the Mirithi pup Hope. It seemed fitting. Later that evening, Una sat in her ship's common room with Hope curled up beside her. Selleck was reviewing the repair estimates for the engine. They were still broke. They still had problems. But they also had each other. And they had a story that was spreading across the galaxy. A story about a human who risked everything to save creatures she had never seen before. Simply because it was the right thing to do. A news commentator appeared on the screen. He was a 4-armed Yeneri with a thoughtful expression. The incident at Nexus Station raises interesting questions about humanity. He said, "They are not the strongest species. They are not the most advanced. But they possess something that defies explanation. They will sacrifice their own safety for strangers. They will fight impossible odds for those who cannot fight for themselves." Perhaps that is why so many species find them both confusing and inspiring. They remind us that compassion is not weakness. It is strength. Una turned off the screen and scratched Hope behind her floppy ears. The little Mirithi made a sound of pure contentment. "What do you think?" Una asked her, "Are humans really that special?" Hope just wagged her tail and licked Una's hand. Some questions did not need answers. Some truths were simply felt, and the truth that Una felt in that moment was simple. She had done the right thing, and that was all that mattered. Una moved through the station corridors as quickly as she could, without drawing attention. The cages were heavy and awkward in her arms. The Mirithi pups inside made soft sounds that she hoped nobody else could hear. She was so close now. Just a few more corridors, and she would reach the docking bay. Then she could load the pups onto her ship and leave this terrible station behind. Her communication device buzzed. It was Selleck. "Una?" His voice crackled through the speaker. "We have a problem." "What kind of problem?" "The Kreth merchant has sobered up. He is talking to Syndicate Security right now. He figured out the disease rumors were fake." Una felt her stomach drop. "How long do I have?" "Minutes at most." Selleck replied, "They are already locking down the docking bays. Our ship is flagged for inspection." Una broke into a run. She did not care about drawing attention anymore. She needed to reach her ship before the security forces caught her. The corridors blurred past. Aliens jumped out of her way as she charged through. Some shouted complaints. Some just stared. She burst into docking bay 17 and saw Selleck standing at the bottom of the boarding ramp. His gray skin was shifting rapidly. Between orange and red, he was terrified. "Get inside." Una shouted. She rushed up the ramp with the cages. Selleck followed close behind. "The ship is ready," he said, "but they have disabled our departure clearance. We cannot undock without permission. Then we undock without permission." Una replied. She set the cages down in the cargo hold and ran to the cockpit. Her fingers danced across the controls. The engines roared to life. Warning messages flooded her screens. The station's traffic control was demanding she power down. Attention cargo. Vessel steadfast wind. A harsh voice announced over the communication system. You are ordered to remain docked and submit to inspection. Failure to comply will result in severe consequences. Yuna ignored the warning. She began overriding the magnetic clamps that held her ship in place. What are you doing? Selleck asked, getting us out of here. They will shoot us down. Maybe. Yuna admitted. Or maybe they will decide we are not worth the trouble. The clamps released with a heavy clunk. Yuna fired the maneuvering thrusters and pulled the ship away. From the docking bay, alarms screamed throughout the cockpit. Then another sound joined the chaos. Boots on metal, many boots. Yuna looked at the external cameras and saw Syndicate soldiers pouring into the docking bay. They were too late to stop her ship, but they were blocking the exit. More soldiers were gathering in the corridor beyond. They cannot reach us now, Selleck said with relief. No, Yuna agreed. But we cannot leave either. The station's defensive systems had locked onto her ship. If she tried to fly toward the exit, they would blast her into atoms. She was trapped. The communication system crackled again. Human vessel. A new voice said. This one was calm and cold. I am Commander Threx of the Velthary Syndicate. You have stolen property belonging to one of our licensed merchants. You will return to the docking bay and surrender immediately. I have not stolen anything. Yuna replied, I purchased these creatures legally. The merchant Vrek disputes that claim. He says you tricked him with false information. That is fraud, and fraud is punished severely on this station. Yuna muted the communication and turned to Selleck. I need to think. She said, think quickly. He replied, they are not known for patience. Yuna looked back at the cargo hold where the Murithi pups were huddled in their cages. They had gone quiet. They seemed to sense the danger. She had risked everything to save them. Her money was gone. Her ship could not leave. The Syndicate wanted to punish her, and she still might fail. But then she remembered something. She remembered all the other beings she had seen on this station. She remembered the family shopping in the markets. She remembered the traders and travelers and workers who came from dozens of different worlds. Not everyone here was a criminal. Not everyone supported what the Syndicate did. Maybe she could not fight the Syndicate alone, but maybe. She did not have to Selleck. She said, can you broadcast a message across the entire station? The station's public communication network is open. He said, anyone can broadcast if they pay the fee. Use whatever credits I have left. Selleck worked at his console for a moment. You are connected, he said. Whatever you say will be heard on every deck. Yuna took a deep breath. Then she began speaking. My name is Yuna Park, she said. I am a human cargo hauler. Right now, the Velthary Syndicate is holding my ship hostage because I saved 6 innocent creatures from being slaughtered for a feast. She activated the ship's external cameras and pointed them at the cargo hold. The image of the Murithi pups appeared on every public screen across the station. These are Murithi. She continued, they are gentle beings who bond with their caretakers like family. They were nearly hunted to extinction because they trusted everyone they met. Tonight, they were supposed to be killed and eaten by someone who thinks his wealth gives him the right to consume innocent lives. I could not let that happen. I know many of you come from species that form bonds with other creatures. I know many of you have loved a pet or a companion animal. I know many of you would do the same thing I did if you saw these faces. I am asking for your help, not to fight, not to break laws, just to stand witness. Come to Docking Bay 17. Let the Syndicate see that they are being watched. Let them know that the galaxy is paying attention to what they do next. Yuna ended the broadcast and waited for a long, terrible moment. Nothing happened. Then she heard voices outside. She looked at the cameras and saw something incredible. People were gathering at the entrance to the docking bay. First one human appeared, then another, then a Tarani family with 3 children, then a group of Palaxians who ran a nearby shop. More and more beings arrived. They stood between the syndicate soldiers and her ship. They did not threaten anyone. They did not shout or fight. They simply stood there, watching, waiting, and more kept coming. Yuna felt tears forming in her eyes. She had asked for help, and the station had answered. The gambling den was called the Silver Void, and it occupied a large space on the station's middle deck. Yuna stood outside the entrance and took a deep breath. She had changed into nicer clothes, something that would help her blend in with the wealthy gamblers inside. Her credit chip felt like a burning coal in her pocket. Everything she owned was loaded onto that small piece of metal. If she lost it tonight, she would be stranded and broke. But those 6 small faces kept appearing in her mind. Those large, trusting eyes kept looking at her. She pushed through the entrance and stepped into a world of dim lights and quiet tension. Tables were arranged throughout the room. Different games of chance were being played at each one. Species from across the galaxy sat together with cards and dice and holographic displays. Credits changed hands with every round. Yuna scanned the room until she spotted her target. Vrek the Kreth merchant sat at a corner table. He was playing a card game with 3 other beings. A glass of amber liquid sat near his elbow. His yellow eyes were focused on his cards with intense concentration. Yuna walked to the bar and ordered a drink she did not intend to finish. She needed to look like she belonged. Here, she watched Vrek play for nearly an hour. He was good at the game, but not great. He won some hands and lost others. More importantly, he kept drinking. Each time his glass emptied, a server brought him another. This was good. Drunk people made mistakes. A seat opened at Vrek's table when one of the players ran out of credits. Yuna walked over and gestured to the empty chair. "Mind if I join?" She asked. Vrek looked up and recognized her. His eyes narrowed with suspicion. "You are the human from my shop," he said. "The one who wanted to buy my Marathi." "I am," Yuna admitted. "But I realized I cannot afford them, so I thought I might try to win some credits instead." The other players did not seem to care about the conversation. They just wanted to keep playing. Vrek studied her for a long moment. Then he shrugged his scaled shoulders. "Your credits are as good as anyone's," he said. "Sit down." Yuna took the seat and bought into the game. The cards were strange to her, but she had learned the rules during her research. She played carefully at first. She won a few small hands and lost a few others. She made sure to seem like just another casual gambler. Meanwhile, she kept Vrek talking. She asked about his business. She asked about the station. She asked about his other customers. Vrek was happy to brag about his success. He talked about the rare creatures he had sold over the years. He talked about the wealthy clients who sought his merchandise. He talked about the feast tonight and how honored he was to supply it. Each time his glass emptied, Yuna made sure a server noticed each time a new drink arrived. Vrek drank it without hesitation. 2 hours passed. Yuna was down some credits, but not too many. Vrek was definitely drunk now. His movements were slower and his words were slightly slurred. Then his communication device began buzzing. He glanced at it and frowned. "Excuse me," he said to the table. He stepped away to take the call. Yuna watched him from the corner of her eye. She could not hear what was being said, but she could see his reaction. His scales seemed to tighten against his body. His eyes went wide with alarm. He ended the call and immediately received another one. Then another. The information broker had done the job. Right now, rumors were spreading through the lower markets. Rumors about crimson wasting. Rumors about infected livestock. Rumors about a shipment of Marathi that might be carrying the deadly disease. Vrek rushed back to the table. "I must go," he announced. "There is an emergency with my merchandise." He gathered his remaining credits and hurried toward the exit. Yuna calmly finished the hand she was playing. Then she cashed out her remaining credits and followed him. she did not rush. She knew exactly where he was going when she arrived at his stall in the lower markets. Rek was in a state of panic. Other merchants had closed their shops and were standing at a distance. Some were wearing protective masks. Some were shouting angry questions at Vrek. "Your creatures are diseased." One yelled, "You have endangered us all." "No," Vrek protested. "They are healthy. I inspected them myself." "Then why is everyone talking about crimson wasting?" Another demanded. "Why are health officials asking questions?" Yuna approached the scene with careful steps. She put on an expression of concern mixed with opportunity. "What is happening here?" she asked innocently. Rex spun to face her. His yellow eyes were wild with fear and alcohol. "You," he said. "Did you do this?" "Do what?" Yuna asked. "I was gambling with you for the past 2 hours. How could I have done anything?" Rex opened his mouth to argue, but he could not find the words. She was right. She had been with him the entire time. He could not accuse her without evidence. "I heard something about infected livestock." Yuna continued. "That sounds terrible. If your merchandise is contaminated, you will have to destroy it. The syndicate will not want diseased meat served at their feast." Rex's scales went pale. He clearly had not thought about what the syndicate would do when they learned their special dinner might be contaminated. "It is not contaminated," he insisted weakly. "Can you prove that?" Yuna asked. "Do you have medical certification? Do you have test results?" Vrek did not have any of those things. Illegal merchandise rarely came with documentation. "I can help you," Yuna offered. "I have a cargo ship with a medical incinerator. I can dispose of the creatures quietly before the syndicate finds out, for a reasonable fee, of course." Vrek stared at her. She could see him calculating his options if he kept the Marathi and they turned out to be sick. He would be blamed for endangering important people. The syndicate would punish him severely, maybe even kill him. But if he let this human dispose of them quietly, the problem would disappear. He would lose his profit, but he would keep his life. "How much?" he asked. Yuna named a price. It was almost everything she had lost at the gambling table. Vrek barely hesitated. "Take them," he said. "Take them and get them off this station before anyone connects them to me." Yuna nodded and walked to the cages. The 6 Marathi pups looked up at her with their beautiful eyes. They seemed to recognize her. Their tails began wagging weakly. "It is okay," she whispered to them. "I'm going to get you out of here." She lifted the cages carefully and began carrying them toward the docking bay. Her arms ached from the weight, but she did not slow down. She had done it. She had actually done it. But she knew she was not safe yet. She still had to get off the station, and something told her that would not be as easy as she hoped. The cargo hauler's steadfast wind drifted toward Nexus Station like a tired bird seeking rest after a long journey across the stars. Unipark sat in the pilot's seat and watched a massive structure grow larger through her viewport. Nexus Station was a place where laws meant little and credits meant everything. It floated in contested space, far from any government that might enforce rules about what could be bought or sold. Yuna had visited many times before. She knew the dangers and she knew the opportunities. Her ship needed fuel and her stomach needed food that did not come from a recycler. Docking request approved. The station's automated voice announced through her speakers, "Bay 17, lower commercial deck." Yuna guided her ship into the designated bay with practiced skill. The magnetic clamps grabbed the hull and held it steady. She powered down the main engines and stretched her arms above her head. 3 weeks in hyperspace had left her muscles stiff and her mind hungry for something other than metal walls. Her crewmate Selek emerged from the engine room. The Tirani was tall and covered in smooth gray skin that shifted color slightly based on his mood. Right now he appeared pale blue, which meant he was cautious. "I will stay with the ship," he said in his careful way of speaking. "This station makes me uncomfortable." Yuna nodded and grabbed her jacket from the back of her chair. I will be back in a few hours, she told him. Just going to find some real food and maybe look around the markets. Be careful, Selig warned. The Volturi Syndicate controls this station now. I know, Una replied. I will keep my head down. She walked through the airlock and into the busy corridors of Nexus Station. The air smelled like 100 different worlds mixed. Together, aliens of every shape and size moved past her. Some walked on two legs like her, and some slithered or floated or crawled. Una made her way to the food district first. She found a small stall run by a friendly four-armed cook and ordered something that looked almost like noodles. It tasted strange but satisfying after eating. She decided to explore the lower markets. This was where traders sold unusual goods. Most of it was legal, or at least legal enough that nobody asked questions. Una wandered past stalls, selling ancient artifacts and rare minerals and technology. From forgotten civilizations, she had no money for such things, but she enjoyed looking. Then she heard a sound that made her stop. It was a whimper. It was small and sad, and it pulled at something deep inside her chest. Una followed the sound through a narrow passage between two larger shops. She found a cramped stall tucked away in a corner. Cages were stacked against the back wall. Inside those cages were creatures unlike anything she had seen before. They were small, about the size of a human infant. Their bodies were covered in soft fur that ranged from golden brown to silver white. They had large round eyes that seemed to hold entire galaxies within them. Their ears were long and floppy, and their tails wagged. Weakly despite their obvious fear, 6 of them huddled together in the dirty cages. They pressed against the bars and made soft crying sounds. Una felt her heart break to her eyes. These creatures looked like puppies. They looked like the dogs she had grown up with on Earth. They looked innocent and scared and desperate for someone to help them. Ah, a customer, a voice said. Una turned to see the stall's owner approaching. He was a Kreth, a reptilian species known for their sharp business sense and sharper teeth. His scales were dark green, and his yellow eyes studied her with interest. You have good taste, the Kreth said. These are Mirathi pups. Very rare and very delicious. Delicious. Una repeated. The word tasted like poison in her mouth. Oh yes. The merchant continued happily. The meat is tender and sweet when they are young like this. These 6 are scheduled for tonight's feast. A wealthy syndicate captain is celebrating his promotion, and he specifically requested Mirathi. Una looked back at the cages. One of the pups had moved closer to the bars near her. It stretched its small paw through the gap and touched her hand. Its fur was impossibly soft. Its eyes looked up at her with something that might have been hope. How much? Una asked to buy them all. The Kreth laughed. You want to buy my merchandise before my best customer receives it. That would require quite a premium. He named a price that made Una's stomach drop. It was more than she earned in 2 years of hauling cargo. It was more money than she had ever possessed at one time in her entire life. I do not have that much, she admitted. Then I am afraid we have nothing to discuss, the Kreth said. Now please step away from the livestock. You are making them agitated. Una did not want to step away. Every part of her wanted to grab those cages and run. But she knew that would be suicide. The syndicate had soldiers everywhere. She would be caught before she reached her ship. What time is the feast? She asked. The Kreth looked suspicious, but answered anyway. 3 hours after the station's night cycle begins. Why do you ask? Just curious, Una said. She forced herself to turn away from the cages. She forced herself to walk back toward the main corridor behind her. She heard the pups crying. They sounded like they knew she was leaving them. They sounded like they were begging her to come back. Una walked faster. She could not look back. If she looked back, she would do something foolish. She would do something that would get her killed. But as she walked, she made a decision. She was not going to let those creatures die. She did not know how she would save them. She did not know what it would cost her. But she knew with absolute certainty that she would not leave this station while those innocent beings were still in danger. Una Park had always been told that her soft heart would get her in trouble someday. It seemed that day had finally arrived. She hurried back toward her ship with her mind already racing through possibilities. She had 3 hours before the night cycle. She had 3 hours to find a way to rescue 6 alien puppies from being served at a syndicate feast. It seemed impossible, but Una had learned long ago that humans had a talent for achieving the impossible, especially when innocent lives hung in the balance. Una burst through the airlock of her ship with her breath coming fast and her mind spinning with terrible images. Selig looked up from the console he was monitoring. His gray skin shifted to a worried orange color when he saw her expression. "What happened?" he asked. "Are you injured?" "No," Una said, "but I need to use the ship's information database right now." She pushed past him and sat down at the main terminal. Her fingers flew across the controls as she searched for everything she could find. About Marathi, Selig stood behind her and watched with growing concern. "Marathi," he read over her shoulder. "I have never heard of this species." "Neither had I until 20 minutes ago." Una replied. The information began appearing on her screen. She read every word with desperate attention. The Marathi were native to a small world called Sanctuary 7 in a distant system. They were classified as semi-sentient, meaning they possessed intelligence, somewhere between a common animal and a fully aware being. They could not speak or build tools, but they could understand simple language and form deep emotional bonds with other creatures. For thousands of years, the Marathi lived peacefully on their homeworld. Then the galaxy discovered them. Their meat was considered a rare delicacy among several wealthy species. Their fur was prized for luxury clothing. Their trusting nature made them incredibly easy to capture. Within 2 centuries, the Marathi were nearly extinct. The Galactic Accords had declared Sanctuary 7 a protected world and banned all hunting or trading of Marathi. But laws meant nothing to those who operated in contested space. The illegal trade continued in dark corners of the galaxy, where credits spoke louder than regulations. Una felt sick as she read about how the creatures were typically prepared for consumption. She forced herself to keep reading. She needed to understand everything if she was going to save them. These creatures bond with their caretakers, she said quietly. It says here that once a Marathi forms a connection with someone, they will remain loyal until death. That is why they were so easy to hunt. Selig observed. They trusted everyone. Yes, Una agreed. And now 6 of them are going to be killed tonight because some syndicate captain wants to impress his friends. Selig's skin turned a cautious gray. "Una," he said slowly, "what are you planning?" "I am planning to stop it." "That is extremely unwise," Selig said. "The Vulturi Syndicate does not tolerate interference in their business. The punishment for theft is severe. I have heard they space people who cross them." "I know," Una said. "I know all of that. But I cannot walk away from this." "Why not?" Selig asked. "They are not your species. They are not even from your region of space. You have no connection to them." Una turned to face her crewmate. "Did you see the news feeds last year about the Palaxian child who fell into a frozen lake on Station 12? Selig nodded slowly. "A human jumped in to save her," he said. "The water was cold enough to kill most species in minutes. The human nearly died from hypothermia. That human had no connection to the Palaxians either," Una said. "But he jumped anyway. That is what humans do. We see someone in trouble and we help. It does not matter if they look like us or speak our language or come from our world. We help because helping is right." Selig was quiet for a long moment. The ship's engine still needs repairs. He finally said, "If we have to leave quickly, we may not be able to outrun pursuit. I know. Your savings were meant for those repairs. I know that too. And you are still going to do this." Una looked at her crewmate with steady eyes. I am still going to do this. She confirmed, I just need to figure out how. She turned back to the terminal and began researching the station itself. She learned that the Kreth merchant who owned the Marathi was named Vrek. He had been operating on Nexus Station for several years. He specialized in rare livestock and exotic meats. His prices were high, but his quality was considered excellent. She also learned that Vrek had a weakness. He loved gambling. Every evening he visited a gambling den on the station's middle deck. He played cards and drank expensive liquor, and often stayed until very late. An idea began forming in Yuna's mind. It was risky and complicated and required things to go exactly right, but it was the only plan she could think of. Selleck. She said, Do you know anything about crimson wasting, the disease? Selleck asked. Yes. It is a terrible illness that affects reptilian species. It causes scales to fall off and organs to fail. There is no cure. And how would someone recognize if an animal was infected? Selleck thought about it. The symptoms take time to appear in the infected creature, but there are tests that can detect it early. Without a test, there would be no way to know. Yuna smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had just figured out how to do something very dangerous. I need you to stay here and prepare the ship for a quick departure, she said. I also need you to find me an information broker, someone who can spread rumors quickly through the station. What kind of rumors? Selleck asked. The kind that will make a reptilian merchant very nervous about his merchandise. Selleck's skin shifted through several colors as he processed what she was suggesting. This is a terrible plan, he said. It has so many ways to fail. I know, Yuna agreed. But those creatures are counting on someone to save them. And right now that someone is me. She stood up and grabbed her jacket again. How much money do we have in the ship's account? All of it, Selleck said. Your entire savings. It is meant for the engine repairs. Yuna felt her heart ache. That money represented years of hard work. It represented her future security. It represented everything she had built since leaving Earth. Transfer it to my personal credit chip, she said. Selleck stared at her. All of it. All of it. Yuna, he said softly. If this fails, you will have nothing. If I do not try, she replied, I will have to live with the knowledge that I could have saved 6 innocent lives and chose not to. That would be worse than having nothing. Selleck was quiet for a long moment. Then his skin turned a deep, steady blue. It was the color of acceptance. I will prepare the ship, he said, and I will find your information broker. Thank you, Yuna said. I knew I could count on you. She walked toward the airlock with her credit chip heavy in her pocket. 3 hours until the night cycle began. 3 hours until 6 small creatures would be killed for a monster's dinner. Yuna did not know if her plan would work, but she knew she had to try. Some things were worth risking everything for, and innocent lives were at the top of that list.